Merry meet. The holiday season can be a difficult time for many of us. From the stress of finding the perfect gift for those on your list, to navigating holiday gatherings with your non witchy friends and family, there can be a variety of negative emotions and feelings that this time of year brings up for many of us. So, luckily, though, for us, there are many things that we can do both in our magical and our mundane lives to help us not just survive but thrive during the holiday season. So merry meet, I'm Aislin and this is Ask Aislin and I am here tonight talking about magical self-care for the holidays. So welcome to those who are joining us. I see Kurt is in the chat. Welcome everyone, and we are going to dive in just a moment. But before we do, just leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in the video, and that will help us get this to the feed of more people. And if you are with us live, we have a Q&A as always at the end of the episode. You can ask me anything you want related to witchcraft, shadow work, or energy work. So put those comments in the chat. And those of you who are watching in replay, you can put questions in the chat as well, and I go back later and I will answer those questions. All right, so we are going to dive in. I see Andrea is here as well. Merry meet, everybody. So, as I mentioned, this can be a difficult time for many people. It can bring up feelings of sadness and depression, to feelings of anxiety and stress. Sometimes people feel grief during this time of year, loneliness, a sense of not belonging. I feel like that one for me has always been a big one when I was growing up as a kid. I just didn't feel like I belonged around the people in my family. And so it was a hard time to feel that way. And then especially as I began finding more of my own spiritual path and eventually the path of witchcraft, I felt even more and more alone and isolated from the people who were around me as I was growing up in Indiana. So, on top of all of this, so on top of all of these feelings that we might be feeling, each one of us different, right? The longer nights and the shorter days and the lack of sunshine at this time of the year can also make us feel depleted of our energy and can often make us feel like we need to slow down and just embrace it. And if we can't slow down and embrace it, it compounds the problem and it makes us feel worse. So, oftentimes the holidays do not allow us that space to slow down. There's this kind of this go 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 madness. I was just at the store the other day, the night before last, and the parking is crazy at Target and different places. You know, people are in a bad mood at a time of the year when when really we should be feeling more happy and joyful, right? Because we know in many of the religions, including the spirituality that we as witches might practice, this is the coming home of the light, the bringing back of the light. So this is supposed to be a joyous time, but it's a time when we can often really descend into those more negative feelings. And so if we are continuously fighting against our own energy, like our energy kind of telling us to pull back, set boundaries, do good things for yourself, and yet you're being forced out into the world to maybe do things that you don't want to do or things that you don't have time for, we are fighting against our own energy, right? So this is why self-care is going to be particularly important for us right now. It's important for us at all times. So hopefully what you learned today in this episode will give you some ideas to help you not only now during the holiday season to kind of survive and, like as I said, thrive during this time of year, but hopefully these are practices that you can take with you into the rest of the year as well. They don't just have to be things we do right now. So hopefully we can make that a priority, right? So the first thing that we have to remember, though, is that we have a lot more control over our own emotions, over our feelings, and over our circumstances than we think we do. So sometimes it feels like everything's out of control, everything's kind of being done to us, and we don't have much of a say in things, and we just sort of have to weather it and get through it. You've probably told yourself that before. You've heard your inner dialogue, right? I just have to get through this. I just have to, make it through this time, and then things will be better. But we actually have way more control than we think, which means that if you do something intentional, or maybe more than one thing intentional, you can have a better outcome for the holiday season. You can have a better outcome for any part of your life where you're feeling stressed out. Now, you are your own magic, and that's always the important thing to remember. It can sound kind of cheesy and cliche, but it's true. It all starts within you first, right? And so you do have the ability to create change in your life. And self care is a change like any other kind of change you want to bring in. Self care is a change that you can also bring into your life. So a little bit goes a long way, and that's also the important thing to remember. Those of you who followed me for a while know that I always say all that you really need is a few minutes a day, and as long as you're practicing consistently, you are going to have better benefits than if you didn't do anything like all week or for 2 weeks, and all of a sudden you do this one really big practice. So the consistency is going to be much more important than the time that is spent. And we'll kind of return to that idea over and over and over again because it is something that will get into a lot of people's way. So, for example, if you think about like exercise, physical exercise, right? It's going to be much better if somebody does a little bit of exercise on most days than if they just go to the gym one day a week or once every 2 weeks and they're there for like 2 or 3 hours. So the same is going to apply for our self-care practice. The same is going to apply for our magical practice. And so really what it is that you need to make is just the shift in your thoughts so that you can make the commitment that each day you're going to spend a little bit of time on your self-care. And that's going to be more important now than ever. Right. So at the very least, make the commitment that you are going to practice some self-care on every day or most days this week. And then hopefully you'll start to enjoy that time that you're spending. You're going to see the benefits in your own life. And then that's a practice that you'll be able to carry beyond this. Now, I think that another thing, before we get into some of the ideas of what we can do, and we're going to talk about both mundane and magical ideas, and we're also going to talk about how they're really not all that different. But I think that the other thing that is important for us to consider is our own energy. So it's going to be important for you to really pay attention to your energy at this time of the year. And then hopefully you'll take that forward into your life. But notice how your energy ebbs and flows. When do you feel like you have low energy? When do you feel like you have higher energy? In Eastern systems, they tell us that there are two kind of main types of energy. One is a masculine energy, one is a feminine energy. So we have the yang and the yin of Chinese medicine. We also have in the yogic system that also comes from the East, we have two channels that go around our main energy channel, and one carries feminine energy, that's the Ida, and one carries masculine energy, and that is the Pingala. Now we need both types of energy regardless of the gender that we might identify with, and these different energies will come to play at different times. So, for example, we need more masculine energy that gives us will and drive and logic, and it has more of a linear thinking pattern to it, which is important because during the holidays there's a lot of things to schedule, and we can't really have that like loose feminine sort of spiral idea of time when we're trying to stay on schedule, right? So there's a positive to all of this. There's a time for all of this. And the feminine energy, I should say before we go to the feminine energy, the masculine energy tends to like to go and go and go and keep us moving and pulls and pushes us with that drive, right? So it's all about doing. Whereas our feminine energy is more creative. It's how we tap into our intuition. It's when we rest and when we receive, when we're open to the flow around us. That's when we're in that more feminine energy. It's about it has a more spiral structure of time. It notices patterns rather than sort of an A to Z kind of movement through time. And it also is what we engage in when we're refueling ourselves, which is going to be especially important. That's what self-care is all about, right? Is refueling. So both of these energies are needed, like I mentioned. And as things start to get busier around the holidays, though, you're probably going to find yourself more in that masculine side of the energy. So I think about, like, I'm just thinking about myself at Target the other day. There's a list of things to get. There's a bunch of places to go. You got to get the, it's more masculine energy, and it goes until it's done, right? And the problem is if we don't switch over to that more restful, relaxing type of energy, and we're just go, the stress just compounds itself. You're going to burn out eventually, and this is what can lead to a lot of the stress and anxiety and negative feelings that we feel at this time of the year. So this is why I say, before we begin talking about any of this, is to pay attention to your energy. In fact, pay attention to it right now. What energy are you feeling right now? Do you feel like you're more in that kind of go planning kind of logic state, or are you feeling more restful and peaceful, and you're going with the flow? Okay, so you can pause throughout your day, and you can ask yourself that very simple question, and that in and of itself is a self-care practice. So I would recommend, if you don't think that you'll remember to do it, if you have like an Apple Watch or a phone or something that you could set an alarm for every couple of hours that it goes off, and then it reminds you to just take a moment, maybe even reset with a breath, check in, and ask yourself where your energy is at. And when you check in, if you notice that you're in the go state like all the time, then that's even more reason that we need to bring in more of these self-care practices. And if you check in and you're pretty calm, then you're going to know that you're doing a pretty good job here. Okay? And then that is where, like, when we notice that we're in more of that masculine go energy, that is where the self-care practices come in, and they're just going to help to naturally balance us out. So what I also would recommend is, if you check in throughout the day and you notice that you're in that more activated energy more times than not, it could be beneficial to you to try to counter that with a few minutes of more feminine energy practices. So a few ideas would just be resting for 5 minutes. And sometimes people will say to me, how can I? Because there's all kinds of people here and there's all kinds of things going on around me, and I can't get any time to myself. And so hopefully you have a door in your bathroom, and hopefully you can close that door and you can go in there and you can spend 5 minutes. And some of the practices I'm going to talk about today, most of them can be done in 5 minutes. So you can go in the bathroom and you can just do one of these practices if you can't get away. But resting for 5 minutes, just taking that time out of your day to rest for a few minutes. Drink a glass of water or juice or something. Nourish yourself, rehydrate yourself. When we're stressed out, all kinds of self-care practices start to go away. And that can include nourishing ourselves. We're not drinking enough water. We're not eating good, healthy, nourishing foods. It's not just the self-care that we think about, like, oh, I'm not doing my meditation, or I'm not doing my breath work, or my candle gazing, or whatever. It can be this stuff too. So pause and drink some water. Pause and eat something nourishing or something grounding. Or if you're feeling particularly ungrounded, put a little bit of salt on your tongue, and that can help bring you down. Focus on something that delights your senses. So if there's a scent that you really like, put that in the bathroom, if the bathroom is the only place you can get away, and go in there and smell that scent. Do something that feels good for you. Breathe intentionally. Sometimes we think that it has to be this big practice that we have to sit down for, but I love the idea of just 3 intentional breaths. And it is just, you breathe in very deeply, and you exhale, and you do it for 3 times. And as you do it, you can even imagine things that are weighing on your shoulders. You can imagine those just rolling off your shoulders and just leaving your aura. And so a little bit goes a long way. Now, in addition to pausing to check in with your energy, you can also bring in some self-care practices, which is what we're going to spend the remainder of the episode talking about, both mundane and magical practices. But I did want to start with a definition of magic, because personally to me, everything we're going to talk about today, even the ones that people might classify as mundane, I think these are magical practices. Because if you look at the definition of magic, And look at the definition that Aleister Crowley came up with, and many people afterwards have used his definition as sort of a backbone to create their own. He says that magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. So I'll say it one more time. The science and art of creating change to occur in conformity with will. So Crowley actually believed that everything we did, anything that you do to change your state of being or to change, or anything that you will to happen, are acts of magic, and that includes the mundane. So he felt that that was mundane things we could do as well as ritual magic. It didn't just apply to ritual magic. So in that regard, there really isn't that much difference between the mundane and the magical. So I am going to categorize these in two different groups today. But I personally, if I was asked, I think that they are all magical practices that we can use for our self-care during the holiday seasons and hopefully beyond. Okay, so let us begin. But before we do that, I just wanted to check out the chat and see how what's going on in the chat here. Andrea said she was at the store tonight and it was insanity. Yeah, it just gets crazier as you get closer and closer to Christmas, right? And so this is why some of these practices, you can do them in your car before you go in, and do them in your car when you're done with the store. Jamie is here. She said she is finishing some cookies, and everybody in the chat is excited about cookies. I see. And Sabrina is here. She said she's looking for the gifts and getting finished with wrapping. Yeah, so everybody's got all these last minute things that they are doing. So okay, so let us start with a few of these practices that probably many people would consider mundane. And then I encourage you, whether you're live or you're watching back in replay, share with us too if these are practices that have worked for you or they haven't worked for you, or if there are practices you have that aren't on my list. We'd love to hear from you too. Okay, so the very first one is sleep. So it can be hard to sleep, especially if you have a house full of guests, you have a lot going on, you're up wrapping presents, you're up getting things ready. But sleep is super important right now, so prioritizing that the best that you can. And that also includes taking naps when you need to. So I know that when I have spent Christmas at my parents' house in Florida, sometimes it can get emotional. Things come up, like I said earlier, like I always feel this sort of not necessarily a being left out, but sort of a disconnect from everybody else sometimes at the holidays, because they're very, very devout Christian and I'm not. And it can feel like a disconnect. And so sometimes the energy can become very overwhelming. And I know when I used to go back and visit them a lot for the holidays, I would take naps in the day because it would just deplete my energy and I would just need the space to be away. So making sure that you do that. If you need to take time out in the day to rest, prioritize your self-care. This whole entire episode is about prioritizing. So even if people try to make you feel guilty about something, the next idea on the list is about boundaries, and it's about saying no when you need to. So we don't always have to say yes to every single person and every single request that people have. This can be a very hard one for many of us. Many of the people who follow me and are members of Body Mind Witchcraft, you guys and me included, we're givers, we're over givers. It's really hard to say no. But being able to say no and prioritize yourself means that there's more of you later to give, right? If you're depleted, there's not very much of you to give. And you're also, when you're very depleted, you're likely to say things that you don't mean. You're likely to do things that you regret. And so, but if you start from a place where you're already filled up, less of that is going to happen. And even when things like maybe there's conflicts that can arise within a family, or around the holidays, if you are at a more filled up spot, you're better able to handle those things. So really keeping those boundaries, creating good boundaries that you can maintain even during the holidays, and that will often mean saying no. And you don't also, just so you know too, about no, about the word no, you don't have to explain why. You just can say no, I can't. I can't right now. And you don't have to give explanations. Sometimes I find with myself, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, like I feel like I have to apologize for myself or my thoughts or my needs or things like that. You don't have to apologize for any of it. It's you, right? And what you'll probably find is that other people around you have no problem, right? They set their boundaries. They say no all the time. They disappoint you, right? So you can do the same as well. And so anyway, that is another. So these ideas are falling into the mundane set right now, but we will get to the more magical practices in just a moment. Another thing is to be alone when you need to. So it is okay, like I said, to say no, to take the space, to be alone, to go late somewhere, not stay the whole time, to leave early. You can do any of these things during the holidays or anytime, right? And you're going to find that if you do more of this, it gets easier. If you practice more of these practices, it gets easier to maintain your boundaries and to be able to say no. Another thing I would recommend is not talking about politics or religion with people who cannot have an open discussion with you, and you know who those people are. In my family, religion is not a good topic to talk about because there isn't ever going to be a debate. It's just, you're stupid. That's what I would hear all over and over and over. You're stupid because you believe this. We're not stupid because we're Christian. To me, it could never made any sense because if one group is stupid, everybody's stupid. If they're, right? So anyway, don't even try to engage in those kinds of conversations with people who can't have them because you end up just running into a brick wall and then you're going to get frustrated and that is not what we want during the holidays. So just kind of avoiding those topics, staying off of them, having the boundaries, being able to say no. Maybe too, if you know that you have a family who you're going to go to and they're going to start talking about politics that you might disagree with, or they're going to start talking about religion, or they might be like mine, like saying that you're stupid for what you believe. Have a list of like 5 things beforehand, 5 topics that you can shift the conversation to and get everybody distracted, get them talking about something different, and you can easily avoid those conversations about religion and politics. Listen to your body. That can be especially important. So sometimes we sort of check out. Many of us who are very spiritual, sometimes it'll feel like we're living like up in the head. It's like our head is cut off, and that's kind of where our consciousness is. So having some more grounding practices that we'll talk about in just a bit when we get to the magical ideas. But being able to ground can be especially important, but at a more mundane level, really listening to your body. Your headache is likely telling you something. Sometimes it can just be telling you that you didn't drink enough water or you didn't eat enough that day. But the headache can also be reminding you of stress, right? That you're in a stressful situation. So really listening to that, if you have pains in your body, if your intuition is telling you to remove yourself from a situation or something like that because you feel it in your gut or you feel it in whatever part of your body you feel your intuition, really want to listen to that and honor that, and not be so kind of checked out and kind of disembodied, right? And then, of course, prioritizing your needs. It is not selfish to prioritize what you need. Many of us tend to be overgivers, as I said earlier. So just making sure that you allow yourself to come first. You really should come first in your own life, but at the very least, you come somewhere near the top. Sometimes I get it, like with people who have kids, there's a lot that you have to prepare for the holidays. You got to put them first a lot of the time when it comes to this. But have yourself be pretty high up there after them, and you're going to have a much better time experience during these holidays. Okay, so I would like to now shift over to some magical practices that you can also try. So I'm just going to jump in the chat though and see what else is going on. Sabrina said she and her sister are spending their first Christmas together, which that is awesome. Aislin said that she was horribly disappointed that neither Walmart or Wineco had eggnog. Oh, that's a shame, huh? And then I don't know why I can't see the bottom of this chat. Jamie, oh, here. Jamie said she feels me on the religious discussions. Yeah, sometimes it's just we just need to walk away from those, right? Especially when we know that it's not going to be anything that's going to help us. Yeah, like Kurt was saying, movies and sports. Exactly. Have something. I guess sports could be controversial in some families, but having a topic that's a little lighter, and for many families, sports is totally fine. Sports, movies, like entertainment, lighter things like that can be a good way to shift the conversation. Okay, so let us shift over now to some ideas that would probably be considered more magical. Now, the first idea is to wash away your negativity. So, you have a shower or a bathtub or something in your house that you can use to clear out negative energy that may be surrounding you, may be attached to you. And so, I want to share with you a little spell that I learned from Dr. Joseph Levry. He gave this little spell, and I will say, like, he's very particular about do this, do this, do that, which is a little different than my spell, where it's kind of like do substitutions if you need to work with what you've got. So, but I'm going to give you his steps to this spell, and it's cool. And it goes along the idea of going into the shower, going into the bath, and just really allowing that space and the water to wash away any negative energy that's clinging to you. So what he says is to take a bar of soap, and he says it should have 6 sides. And before you get confused by that, a bar of soap with 6 sides is just a bar of soap. So what he means is don't get some fancy shape, get a normal bar of soap. If you can find one that does not have words or pictures or something engraved into it, that's the best. That's best. If you can, you may not always be able to find one that isn't imprinted with the name of the company, but see if you can. If you can find a bar of soap that has nothing printed on it already. Then he says to take a needle. It doesn't matter what kind of needle. Take a needle, and you are going to carve. Now, he suggested to carve the word luck into each of the 6 sides of that bar of soap, right? So you've got the front and the back and the 2 sides, and then you have the top and the bottom, and you carve in the word luck. But I think that you could carve in any intentional word that you want. So if it's peace you're trying to bring in, calm, healing, love, etc., any of the intentions that you can think of, just one word, carve that into all 6 sides of the soap with your needle. Now afterwards he says throw out the needle. Now he's very particular about like the steps, so just throw out the needle. And then the 4th step is that you will then bathe and shower with or shower with this bar of soap, and then he says and see what happens. And he says basically do this every night or every time you take a shower or a bath. I think that you could also use that soap on your hands when you're washing your hands throughout the day. Eventually the soap will all be gone, but he says use it all the way to the end and see what happens. And he says that simple spells like this are sometimes the most effective spells there are. And I tend to agree with him. Sometimes we think it has to be this elaborate thing. People ask me about spells all the time, and sometimes when I give back to them, isn't this big elaborate thing? It's just sending energy with your mind. But the simplest spells can often be the most effective ones. So if you want, try that little spell, cleanse yourself with negativity with a magically enchanted bar of soap, and see what happens. But whenever we're bringing in intention, like Aleister Crowley said, it's magic is shifting. What happens in conformity with our will. So your will is luck or love or peace or calm or whatever it is you carved into that soap. And by doing that intentionally, you start to change your energy. You start to change your vibration. You start to change your intentions and the way you look at things. And it tends to be like a compounding effect, like dominoes, right? And it may just start out a little at a time, but over time, you start to bring in more and more and more of that energy. So I love that little spell, and I wanted to share that with you, and get a bar of soap tonight or tomorrow or something, and charge it and try it, and then I'd love to hear what the result is. So the next idea is setting intentions through affirmations. So affirmations was something I was never very into. I thought they were a little hokey, but honestly, until I started using them and seeing the effect that they had on my life, that's when I started to change my opinion about them. So you can set any affirmation. So whatever is the state of being that you want to be in, set an affirmation about that right now. So if tomorrow is going to be crazy, right? Set an intention that tomorrow will be peaceful and calm and fun. So here are a few intentions that I came up with. I am open to loving myself, and today I show this by. And then you could insert an activity or a practice that you're going to do. I am calm and collected even when others aren't. So kind of think about what is it that you're going to struggle with during the holidays, and set an intention around that. And if it's hard to come up with one, I think that one of the things that I really like is to take a negative thought. So if you notice that there's negative self-talk that's always kind of parroting in your head, right? Take that thought. The holidays, I'm always lonely during the holidays, or the holidays are always a stressful time. Whatever it is that you sort of hear yourself, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or something like that. Whatever it is that's negative in your mind, that's kind of playing in that monkey mind, shift that into the positive and create an affirmation around it. So if the thought is like, I'm not worthy, it's really easy to just shift that to I am worthy, right? The holidays are always chaotic and cause turmoil in my life. And then shift that around to the holidays are always peaceful and I have a good time with my friends and family. And the thing is that when it comes to affirmations, I think that what got in my way is, and what made them feel hokey, is I'm like, just because I said this, I don't believe it right now, and that can sometimes be what trips people up. But the power of affirmations is that you don't have to believe them at first. It's through saying them and repeating them, and then eventually you embody them. And so what I would recommend is just try it out, even if it's something like, what's the worst that can happen if you try it, practice out like that, it doesn't work, whatever, and you don't ever do it again. But that was one of the things for me, is I finally tried it and I was like, wow, this actually changed the way I was thinking, and it actually ended up changing my state of being as well. So one of the things you can do is you can create the affirmation, just repeat it throughout the day. Anytime like somebody's bothering you or you're starting to feel stressed out, repeat that affirmation in your mind, or go in the bathroom and repeat it out loud and activate your throat chakra. You can write it down on post-it notes. That's what I like to do, and then I put it on a mirror or somewhere where I'm going to see it. You can write it on your arm or your hand. If you have a long sleeve shirt, you can write it on your arm, and then nobody has to see it, and then you can sort of look at it from time to time to remind yourself. So there's just a lot we can do with affirmations. Now, another magical idea is creating a boundary with your aura. So I've talked about this in other episodes. One of the things that tends to happen to us, especially if we're very sensitive people, is like we go into this big room where there's a lot of people's energy around us. And the first thing we're going to do, it's sort of like the turtle who goes into his shell, and you pull all your energy inside into this little ball, and you make yourself really small. And one of the things I read the other night, and I know I've seen this quote before, but it's like, think about it. And it was actually a quote totally unrelated to this. It was about eating disorders and people starving themselves to get to be a certain weight or something. And the question was, who benefits from you being smaller than you are? And that really hits home, right? Sometimes, like, who is really benefiting from you making yourself smaller than you are? So unrelated to the eating disorder thing is what we're talking about, but nevertheless, there's a connection, because when we pull all of our energy inside and go into that little our turtle shell, who is benefiting from by us making our energy really small. It's usually not us. Okay, so this is why instead of pulling your aura in, try to push your aura out, and you make yourself bigger, right? So your aura can push all the way out, like as far as your hands, and you have the ability to pull your aura in and out. So just sort of imagine, you can close your eyes for a moment and just imagine that energy field around you and pushing that out. And then set an intention that only people's energy who you welcome into your auric space can come in. And the people's energy who you do not welcome into your auric space cannot come in. And you create this force field around you, and it feels better. It feels better when you're bigger, right? When your energy is bigger than when your energy is so small. And then it almost feels like a defensive thing. And to me, I don't know, maybe it's just like I was always, I played soccer all through middle school and high school, and I was always an offensive player. I've always been like, do something like, rather than always be defensive, do something on the offensive. And sometimes we think of offensive as being like negative or bad, or it's putting the wrong kind of energy out into the world. I don't think so. It's like, to me, it's like being proactive. You're like taking the lead. You're pushing your energy out, right? You're creating a bigger space around you so that your bigger personality can be inside of it. So that would be my thought on auric, kind of the auric field, pushing it out rather than pulling it in. But I also think that after the gathering, so after everybody's gone home or you've gone home and you're kind of in your own space with yourself, do some auric cleansing as well. So this is very easy, and you can just close your eyes. Imagine the auric space around you, and you don't have to make it so big when you're just alone. You can bring it in a little bit closer. But what I like to do is scan the auric field and just notice if there's any areas that seem like they're torn or they're tattered or they're weakened or something like that. And then in your mind's eye, you can just imagine yourself sewing them back up. Or other people like the idea of like taking a brush. If you've ever done dry brushing of your body, it's kind of like that. You can do that in your auric body as well. And just kind of in your mind's eye, just imagine like you're brushing your aura, and just brushing off all the dirt and the grime, anything you've picked up that's not yours. And then you'll be able to go to bed with have a much more restful sleep, because you're not going to bed with everybody else's energy. So that is the idea of auric cleansing, and then kind of creating that auric shield. Another thing you can do is work with crystals. So these are just 4 crystals that I like, but there's, if you're really into crystals and you're not sure which ones to use, Google crystals for protection or crystals for dispelling negative emotions. I really like black tourmaline a lot. It's very grounding, and it's very good for dispelling negative energy. So if you're going to go into a space where there's going to be a lot of negative energy or negative people or potential fighting or arguments or disagreements, black tourmaline is always one that I love a lot for that. Hematite also can have a similar effect. It's a very grounding stone. I think it's really good for sort of protection, especially in social situations. So I like that a lot. I also like, I didn't put them on my list, but I also like onyx, and especially obsidian. Very, very good for dispelling negative energy. And then of course there's selenite, which is good for protection, and it's also a very cleansing stone. In fact, selenite is so cleansing that you can cleanse other stones just by laying them on top of selenite. So a friend of mine, she has this practice, and she's like, if you're wearing stones or you're carrying stones that are meant to dispel energy, a lot of times they absorb that negative energy, and then you're just sort of wearing them, right? And so what she likes to do is take the stones off at night, and she places them on a piece of selenite, or you can get like selenite like boards or plates that you can put them on, and then that in it of itself can actually clear the energy from the stone, and then the next day you can put it back on, and now you're not like, it's not compounding itself by like adding all this negative energy onto it that it's carrying. And then I also like rose quartz. just reminds us to practice self-love. It's just a very lovely stone all around. Its energy is so good for so many things, cleansing, purification, but especially that idea of self-love. So those are some stones that you can bring in. Of course, you can wear them as jewelry. You can also just carry them with you. And then another idea is grounding and mindfulness. So if you feel that during the course of the holidays you're getting ungrounded and you're noticing your mind is very like kind of that monkey mind is going, a lot of negative thoughts, limiting beliefs, take some time to do some grounding. So I think one of the simplest things is the grounding tree meditation. And then kind of going back to that idea, like you can go in the bathroom for 5 minutes, you can stand there and just imagine roots growing down from the soles of your feet down into the earth. And then I like to imagine those roots growing down and then eventually connecting to the roots of a tree, like a great, beautiful tree. And then beginning to breathe in union with that tree. But there are a lot of other grounding meditation practices you can do and versions of the grounding tree meditation. But I think that can be especially good for people who are feeling really stressed out. Like stress to me is like a hot emotion, and grounding is it's cooling, right? So it's going to help bring your energy down. Another thing that you can do is the 5-4-3-2-1 kind of grounding technique. I've talked about this in other episodes in the past. But this can also be a quick check-in that you can do when you close yourself off in the bathroom away from everybody. And so you just are going to take an inventory, and it will help bring you back into the kind of the present, especially if you find yourself kind of scattered and you're off in the past and you're in the future and you just really want to be back here to the present. So you will think about 5 things that you can see. So you just sit there or stand there and you notice 5 things you can see. It should be pretty easy. And then 4 things that you can touch. So really take the time to touch them and think about what they feel like, right? The textures. And then 3 things that you can hear, which is sometimes something that we don't pay attention to because we're always talking, or somebody else is always talking. But if you just get silent for a moment, you can hear the sound of the light, the house settling, or a dog barking in the distance. So just pay attention to 3 things you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and then 1 thing that you can taste. And so if you do all of that, and that's pretty quick, it just takes a few minutes to just pay attention to those things, that in and of itself will help to ground you. Now, besides the stones, like I mentioned earlier, we can also use some herbs for calming. And we can use the herbs in both magical and medicinal ways. So chamomile, and all of these herbs, by the way, you can use for both. So chamomile is just a classic calming herb. Lavender is a go-to for so many people. Ashwagandha is also very good. It's an adaptogen, so it can help balance hormones as well. Very calming for people. Hops is very interesting, a very interesting herb. So you can get hop water. I just got some at Target, and you have to use your ID to pay for it because it's in the alcohol section, but it's non-alcoholic. It even says it on there. But hop water contains, I believe, it has ashwagandha in it, L-theanine, which is an amino acid that is very calming on the nervous system, and then it also has hops. And those 3 ingredients, you buy it, it's just like seltzer water, but it has these things infused in it. And personally, I've heard people say that when they've used it, they've gotten like the best night of sleep they've ever had. I've tried it as well. Very, very calming. Really helps to bring you down, bring your energy down. So try that. Lemon balm and passion flower, both great herbs for bringing down the energy system. I particularly like those as tinctures. Kava is very good, though you want to be careful with that one because it tends to really bring the system down a lot. Like you don't want to drive if you're taking kava. And then of course there's valerian root that you can use for rest and for sleeping before bedtime. So these herbs, they can be used medicinally. Like if we're just taking them, we're using them medicinally, so they change something in our body. But you can also incorporate any of these herbs into magic as well. So you can make sachets that contain these herbs and maybe some of these stones that we talked about and carry that with you. And that could be a nice little spell. Charge it with your intention of peace and calm, raise some energy, rub your hands together, or you can rub your nail beds together, raise some energy, and infuse the sachet with that and all the ingredients within it. And that can be a nice little spell that you can then carry with you. Now, if you want to use essential oils instead of the kind of the herb matter, lavender is a good one again, and also clary sage. That's a really good one. It's also very good for balancing hormones. Lang Lang is one of my favorites. Frankincense is super good for helping bring down stress. So you can get some frankincense essential oil, and then bergamot is also good. So these are, it's not an exhaustive list, just a few, but it will give you some ideas. You could sprinkle some of the essential, a drop of the essential oil in with the herbs and the stones and make your sachet that way. And then see if that helps when you carry that with you. And then practices of self-care would not be complete without talking about breath work. So breath work can be very good for bringing down our system or raising our system up, kind of depending on what kind of energy you need. So I think I mentioned earlier the 3 intentional breaths. That's just a quick reset. It's just 3 really deep inhales and exhales. That can be enough to just kind of reset somebody for the next hour. But if you need a little bit more, go to a space where you can get away. Try the healing square breath. So healing square breath is where you breathe in for a count of 4, you hold for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, and then hold for a count of 4, and then you repeat that for a minute or 2. Very, very calming breath. Along the same lines is the 4-6 and the 4-8 breath. So the 4-6 breath is where you inhale for 4, a count of 4, and you exhale for a count of 6. Or the 4-8 breath is similar. You inhale for a count of 4 and you exhale for a count of 8. The difference between those two is really your lung capacity. Sometimes when people do the 4-8, they feel like they're sort of not hyperventilating, but they feel like they're kind of gasping for air at the end. So you can always start with the 4-6. But the point is, with that type of breath, is that we want a shorter inhale and a longer exhale. And that helps us bring down not only the central nervous system, but the energetic system as well. Brahmari breath is another good one. This is where you kind of close off your ears, you inhale very deeply, and then on the exhale you make a humming sound. So it'll sound like a bee. And it sometimes reminds me every time that, and then you would inhale and do that several rounds of it. But sometimes it reminds me of like a kid who doesn't want like to, when they don't like what someone's saying, they're like, I can't hear you, right? And they close off their ears and make a humming sound. I don't really recommend doing that when you're talking to someone. In fact, I don't recommend doing that when you're talking to someone. But the breath itself is very effective. Go in the bathroom and do it. Find some space where you can do it. You only need to do a few rounds of that breath. Very good for activating the throat chakra. And also, if you're having trouble finding the right words around someone, the Brahmari breath can help you find the right words. And then there is, of course, the more activating breath, which is the breath of fire. So if you're feeling depleted of energy and you need a pick-me-up, breath of fire can help. So breath of fire is very easy. If you've never done it before, you just imagine you're fogging up a mirror or something like that. It's a staccato exhale with a passive inhale in between, and then you close your mouth and you just will do this through the nose. And if you see like how the belly's pumping like that, you'll know that you're doing it right. Now, if you do a minute or 2 or 3 of that, that will help give you a pick-me-up and can get you, like there's like a lull in the day and you need some more energy to get through it. That can also help. A couple more ideas here, and then we'll go into the Q&A. But another thing is just setting up a daily spiritual practice. If you don't have one, now is a good time to set it up. Sometimes we think, I'll set that up later, but you know what? You need it right now. So do it right now, and it can be very easy. It only has to take a couple of minutes. Like I said it earlier, sometimes we get this idea it has to be this big elaborate thing, and so we don't do it because we don't have the time or the energy for this big elaborate thing, and then you're just doing nothing. Rather than sitting there and then beating yourself up about doing nothing, just do something, pick something. So it can be an intention candle, where it's one of my favorite practices. Is I get a candle, I set an intention in it. Every day I light it and I infuse it further with that intention. That literally takes me a minute, right? And that in and of itself, if you did that every single day, there's a practice already that is going to start to change you energetically. You can add in some candle gazing while you are doing it. You can pull a card or two or three and just see if there's any messages coming in from the universe for you. Do some breath work. Like I said, you could pick one of those breaths. Just a minute or two is all you need. Some meditation. You could do seed sounds or chanting. A very nice seed sound is the sound gum. So it is spelled G-A-M, but it's pronounced gum because the A in Sanskrit is pronounced with an And gum is the seed sound of the god Ganesha. Ganesha is the remover of obstacles. So whether you work with this deity or not, you can still use the seed sound. Sometimes people use it even out in the kind of mundane world, or maybe they're not even thinking of it as a magical practice or working with a god or anything like that. And they just chant gum because it removes obstacles, right? So I think that, if there's obstacles that are either self-created or real obstacles out in your life when it comes to the holiday season, try chanting that sound, and that can really help. Or the seed sound of the root chakra is lum, L-A-M, and it is pronounced lum. And if you chant that one over and over again, that one can help ground you. So bringing in just short practices. They literally have to be like 1 or 2 minutes, 5 minutes at the most. And if you do that on most days, that can help you greatly. So now is a good time to bring that into practice. If you're somebody who creates like New Year's resolutions and you're not doing a practice like this, or a daily spiritual practice, this is a great New Year's resolution to have. Like, this is the year I'm going to do it. I'm going to bring it in and I'm going to see what happens. And then, let's see, I think I got two more ideas on here, is glamour magic. So I love glamour magic because it is magic that sort of changes not only the way that you feel, but the way that others view you as well. So you can charge jewelry. If you wear makeup, you can charge your makeup with an intention, and it can be any intention to look attractive is oftentimes what glamour magic is about. But you can charge it with an intention of calm, of peace, of love, of stress-free living, right? You could charge that piece of jewelry, and then when you wear it, it brings that intention with you, right? So in Shadow Seekers, we had a ritual at the end of last month where we charged a ring, or another piece of jewelry if people don't wear rings, and we charged it with like confidence in being a witch. And so every time that you wear that piece of jewelry, you feel more confident at being a witch. So you can do that with anything. Charge your mascara, charge your lipstick, charge a piece of jewelry, charge a key that you'll put in your pocket and carry with you if you don't wear makeup or carry jewelry or wear jewelry, anything like that. But glamour magic can be really effective. Years and years and years ago, I remember when I did a lot of love magic, and we would take baby powder, and today you'd have to make sure it doesn't have talc in it, but we would take baby powder, and then we would put some essential oil in it, like rose or lang lang or something like that, and then we would charge it with the intention of attraction. And then we would wear it when we went out, and it was shocking how many people would buy us drinks or come up to us and want to talk to us because we were wearing this powder that we had made a glamour of. So anyway, you can, like I said, you can charge it with any intention. It doesn't have to be about being attractive, but just bringing in whatever is the intention you want to attract. Charge that into the piece of jewelry or makeup or whatever, and see what happens. And then finally, there is sigil magic. Sigil magic is always really good. Take an intention like, I am peaceful and calm. That would be a good intention, right? So, whatever the intention is you have for the holiday season, write that down in a sentence. Make it in the first person and make it in present tense. So, I am peaceful and calm. Then you will cross out all of the vowels and cross out any repeated letters. You'll be left with a handful of letters, 4, 5, 6 letters. And then you can take those letters and arrange them into a symbol. And then you have a sigil. And you can either charge it with the intention, right? Like draw the symbol, charge it with the intention, and burn it. That's kind of classic sigil magic. Or you can carry it with you. You can write it on you and have a kind of a temporary sigil that you'll wash off later. And that can be really highly effective magic. Okay, so I am going to wrap it up now so we can answer a couple of questions here. But I'm going to check in here with the chat and see how everybody is doing. I see Sabrina said she loves sigils. And then Tabitha said she told herself that affirmations were mantras to make them more palatable. Yeah, sometimes people don't like the word affirmation. There is a slight difference between from like an Eastern perspective. A mantra is usually in like Sanskrit, or it's like in another like vibrational language. But we in the West we use the two words interchangeably. So if it helps to call them mantras, I agree. Just use whatever helps. Andrea said she also loves using sigils, and she does them with runes too. Yes, you can get like a protection rune, and you can make a sigil out of that. Like I said, you can make something temporary. You can draw it on your body, and then wear it, and then wash it off, afterwards. Okay, so let us segue into the Q&A. And Andrea, she had a question about candle scrying. And she said, do you have any tips on candle scrying? And have you found some candles that work better than others? So I personally haven't found candles that I like better than others for scrying. But if you look online, the majority of people say a plain white pillar candle is best. But I think that it's up to you. If there's a different color you want or a different form of candle, get that. But some people will say a plain white pillar candle is best. As far as tips for scrying, you might want to start with just plain candle gazing. So candle gazing is where we kind of go into it without necessarily an intention of scrying. So what I recommend doing is darkening the room. I like to have something lit in the back. I do like a salt lamp in the background, so it just creates a little ambient light, but you could do a night light, or you don't have to do that at all. And you want to ideally sit so that the candle is at eye level. So I like these like little tables back here because they're really good height for sitting at. And this is the lac table from IKEA. But if you have a little table you can sit at, or if you're like sitting at your kitchen table, you just be on a chair and you just want the candle to be at eye level. And then you'll dim the rest of the lights, and then I would just begin with the candle gazing. So you just begin to stare at the candle flame, and what you'll notice is sometimes your eyes will water, or they have to blink a lot, or they get tired of doing it, and you can always close your eyes and rest for a bit, and then you start the candle gazing again. Now, it's not recommended to candle gaze more than 10 minutes. Usually in the beginning, a person may only be able to do it for like a minute, working up to 2 minutes and a little bit longer, eventually working up to 10 minutes. Now, when we're doing the candle gazing, like I said, there's not like necessarily an intention to it. It's just a practice. It's a practice that's stimulating the third eye. It has lots of benefits. Stimulating the pineal gland, which means that it can help you with sleep. But then eventually you can set intentions, or at least be open to other things coming through. And so one of the things with scrying is that sometimes people think that they're going to see these like elaborate visions, and when they don't, they get disappointed and they think it's not working. But scrying can be it's like a medium. It's just you're simply using it as a medium to get information to you from outside of you. And so sometimes that information doesn't come through as visual imagery. It comes through as words. It can just be a word that pops into your head. It can come through as feelings, as emotions, as body sensations. And so just paying attention to everything that comes through can be part of the scrying experience. It doesn't always have to be visual imagery that comes through. And then I would recommend having a book, a journal or something that you will write down, even if things don't make sense or it seems like it was like nothing at all. Always record something down, and then you can look back and you can see patterns eventually. But I would sort of start with like practice the candle gazing, and as you're doing that, you're just going to probably naturally open up to the method of scrying. So I hope that helps. And then Colleen had asked a question about, she said, is there a spell or energy work to help with grief during the holidays? So, I think that, grief can be a really difficult emotion to navigate. During the holidays, it can become more pronounced. Whether we lost someone or something around the holidays, or we just lost that person or thing, we can be reminded of them at the holidays, like they're not here and I wish they were. And so it can cause us to fall deeper into grief, and that can sometimes be a hard place to climb out of. So I think that any of the practices that we talked about tonight could be helpful. I think that, your self-care is going to be the number one most important way to help you navigate grief. Because we are in the darker time of the year, even though at Yule we start to move into the waxing half of the year, nobody's going to feel that for a while, at least until Imbolc. We're in a pretty deep and dark time of the wheel, right? And so this can be a good time to look internally, do some shadow work if it feels safe, if you feel like ready for it, doing some shadow work around your grief. Where does it come from? What is it about? Is it realistic? Sometimes some of our grief can be carrying guilt, things like that it isn't actually realistic, and so or putting too much pressure on ourselves. Like we might feel guilty for things we said or didn't say before we lost someone, and trying to work through that in our shadow work, releasing negative emotions and energy that isn't serving us to carry. And unburdening ourselves of that can also be helpful. Now, because Colleen is in Shadow Seekers, we also have a ritual, and I believe it was from November 2023, and it is Coatlicue, and it is transforming grief. And so there's a meditation in there as well as the full, you don't necessarily have to do the full ritual, you might just do the meditation, but that could help you. That whole entire ritual could help you as well. But finding ways, when we're really overwhelmed with a lot of grief, I think that the self-care is what helps us continue to stay grounded. Finding something good for yourself, doing something nice, taking your inner child out on a date, giving yourself some nourishing food and and hydrating yourself and making sure you're getting enough sleep, like all of kind of the mundane things, and then maybe even try some of these magical practices as well. But you're not alone. Like I see Sabrina in the chat, she's saying like grief is hard to handle during the holidays because it's the third year without her mom. Yeah, so it's going to bring up things for people and makes it hard to navigate the holidays. So see if any of these practices help. I think that if you maybe even set an intention of trying to let go of some of the grief, that could help. And maybe can't do it right in this moment, right when we're like right in the holidays, but maybe afterwards in the days that follow, doing some shadow work around that could help. Okay, so I hope that helps. Anybody else have any more questions or comments? That we don't have to answer questions just about the holidays or self-care. It can be anything you want. And then Sabrina was saying too. She said light a candle of remembrance for the loved one. That can also help too. And then she says, sit and talk to them while gazing at the candle flame. Yeah, and that is also another really nice idea is, spending some time talking to them, write them a letter. Tell them the things that you wish you could say to them right now that you can't. But I love the idea that Sabrina has of, talking to the candle and, calling in that person's energy and just letting them know that you're thinking of them and that you love them. Okay, so I don't see any more questions, so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what's coming up. That'll give you a few more minutes in case there's anything else you want to type in the chat and add. So coming up on next Tuesday is New Year's Eve, and I thought about canceling Ask Aislin, but it's early enough here. I'm not really doing anything. So if, at least that early. So if anybody would like to join me, I'm thinking that Ask Aislinn will be a very special New Year's Eve episode, and we're going to do a New Year's Eve intention setting kind of ritual together. So it'll be less about teaching about a topic or talking about a topic and more about together we're going to do a New Year's Eve practice. So I'm looking forward to that. I hope that some of you can join me for that. On 1/7, the first episode of the new year, we are going to return to the laws of magic. We're going to finish up and talk about the laws of magic part 2. So there's a bunch of laws of magic I didn't have time to talk about during the previous episode, and we will finish that up. We'll be talking about the law of synchronicity. We're going to be talking about the law of sympathetic magic. So there are a lot of laws and ideas that you can use to kind of enhance your magical practice. On 1/14, I don't have a topic set yet. I have a list of things that people have sent me, topics that they would like, but if there's any that you're thinking of, something you'd like to know more about, let me know. You can always put it in the comments, and I will, if it's something I know enough about or can learn enough about, I can add it to our episodes. And then on 1/21, I'm going to be on vacation, so I probably won't do an episode. There might be a chance that I go live anyway from where I'm at, but we may be out that week. So the other thing I want to let you know is starting at the first of the year, probably not quite at the first of the year, but soon in January, my Demystifying Witchcraft course is finally going to be made available to the public. After many months of talking about it, we are finally going to be ready to open it up to the public. Prior to that, anybody from Shadow Seekers who has not gotten the course yet will have a chance to get that first before we open it up for the public. So just look for that soon. That should be coming out in the next couple of weeks with more information. And that course is my foundational course. It is a 13 module course. It's at least 25 hours of material right now, with the expectation that we will be continuing to add to it. And the beauty of that course is when you purchase it, you get everything that's going to happen in that course even in the future. So when I re-record it all and I go live with it eventually again, you would be able to come to those live sessions where I reteach the course. Any additional material that we add to it, you get that as well. So look for more information soon. It is a great course. I see Sabrina saying it's a great course in the comments. And it is the course that I have used for years to teach and train all of the initiates into my own private in-person coven. And one of the benefits of taking that course is that because it is the training modules for our coven, those who take the course online can potentially initiate into our online coven of Midnight's Flame. So more details will be coming soon, and like I said, Shadow Seekers will have the chance to join first, and then we're going to open it up to the public, and that should be happening in January. Okay, so I'm going to sign off for now. But it's been great spending time with you guys tonight, and I hope any of you who are feeling down, sad, stressed out because of the holidays and everything, hopefully something in this episode will help you. Okay, but you always know that you can reach out to me you know, if you need anything, or reach out in our Body Mind Witchcraft Facebook group as well. There's a lot of like-minded souls there, and you'll be able to get some you know, just it's good to be in a group where there's people who kind of understand what you're going through. So feel free to share anything you need to there. And leave a heart or a thumbs up if there is something that you like during the video, and that helps us get it out into the feed of more people. If you are watching back in YouTube, or you don't know about our YouTube channel, Body Mind Witchcraft, make sure to subscribe as well. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers so we can eventually monetize the channel, and we're getting close. So definitely do that. And I will see you all next week for our New Year's Eve intention setting practice, okay? All right, until next time, blessed be.